When it comes to adding and subtracting signage rules, you want to think about it like that. First, you want to separate, make sure you ask yourself, what am I doing? In this case, we're adding or subtracting. So if you have a positive plus a positive, you're going to add, and keep the sign, right? If you have a negative and a negative, you're going to add and keep the sign. Okay. Now if you have a negative and a positive, you're going to subtract and keep the sign of the largest number. The same thing applies if you have a positive and a negative. Both things the same. You keep the sign of the largest number. So what you want to ask yourself is, first, what am I doing? I'm adding and subtracting. Okay, so these are the rules that follow. Now, if you were to be multiplying and dividing, if you are multiplying a positive times a positive, your answer is going to be positive. If you are multiplying a negative times a negative, your answer is going to be positive. But if you are multiplying a positive times a negative, your answer will be negative. If you are multiplying a negative times a positive, your answer will be negative. And the cool thing is that the same thing applies to dividing. So if you're saying positive divided by positive, that gives you positive. Negative divided by negative, that gives you positive. A positive divided by a negative, or a negative divided by a positive, both gives you a negative. Oops. Okay, so let's look at a few examples. I have -1 minus 1. I'm adding and subtracting. Both signs are the same, so that means I'm going to add and keep the sign. What's the sign? Negative. If I have 2 plus 2, both are positives, so I'm going to add and keep the sign. Oops, that is wrong. Interesting. I'm going to add and keep the sign, so it's 4. So let's say I'm doing -2 plus 1. I have a negative, and a positive, so my signs are different, which means I'm going to subtract. So 2 minus 1 is 1, and I'm going to keep the sign of the largest number. So the largest number is 2, therefore it's -1. Now imagine I had -1 plus 2. Now signs are different. Again, I have a negative and a positive, so I'm going to subtract. That gives me 1. Now the sign of the largest number is positive, therefore it's a +1. So let's say we have -1 times a -1, that gives me a +1. Let's say we have 1 times 1, gives me a +1. Let's say we have -1 times 1, that gives me a -1, because I only have one negative, one positive. Imagine we were dividing and we had -4 divided by -2. Both signs are the same, so I get +2. Imagine we have -4 divided by 2. Signs are different, so I'm going to have a 2, and my answer is going to be negative. Okay, even the same as if you have 4 divided by -2, it's still -2.